Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this monthly webinar, 30-minute webinar hosted by Worksoft. The subject matter for this webinar is replacing manual testing with intelligent automation. Excuse me. My name's Dean Robertson. I'm a solution architect with Worksoft, and I'll be taking you through a few slides just to set some context around what we mean by intelligent automation, what the benefits are. Then I'm going to move into a live demonstration of that. There is a recent report being produced by an industry analyst, IDC, and we will be emailing out a copy of that report to any attendees on the webinar. A couple of housekeeping things. It's about a 30-minute webinar. All attendees are on mute, but in the GoToWebinar control panel there is a question panel where you can post questions, and at the end I will hopefully address the questions at the end if there's time remaining within the 30 minutes. So let's start. First thing I'm going to do is, obviously, as I said, take you through a few slides to set the scene, a live demonstration of what we mean by intelligent automation and how we can benefit from that in replacing manual testing capabilities or legacy script-based automation tools. So why has this become a challenge? People historically have been able to test adequately. Testing hasn't been too much of a problem. It's something that I guess organizations would prefer not to do if they could not do it, but they have been able to do it in the past. But more recently it's just become a far greater challenge for organizations, and testing is often one of the biggest bottlenecks or time portions of projects within an organization. And there's several reasons for that. This slide here that shows the kind of current application or modern application landscape that we're seeing shows that the applications that organizations use are fragmenting. Historically, if we go back a number of years, you might find one central ERP system such as SAP or something from Oracle or some other application provider. But now organizations are taking on more and more different technologies that form part of their critical business processes, and the testing of each of these in many cases can require different disciplines, but also these technologies themselves are changing and being changed at a rate that previously organizations hadn't faced. So there's just this greater velocity of change and different technologies to change that are being pushed onto the IT or the QA function as a result of technology change, but also corporate change, the business wanting to move more quickly to remain and be competitive. Legislative change can be causing change in all of these different technologies. So there's just a far more complex set of technologies that make up an organization's landscape. And if organizations have processes that pass through any of these different technologies, and these are just examples of ones we see regularly and are commonplace in the market today, application processes that pass through these applications, it's the integration points that are often where things fall down. So there's a requirement to be able to test from end to end of a business process, whether that's something like hire to retire or procure to pay or order to cash, whatever that might be in your organizations. There's a requirement to test those end-to-end processes, which now span many of these different technologies. So if you map out an organization's business processes, they start to look a bit more complex, with maybe even starting in the mobile arena and moving into technologies through things like SAP, Salesforce, etc., etc. Now this has become even more complex. There's kind of an additional level of complexity added into it, that organizations are now starting to take applications such as Salesforce, such as maybe SuccessFactors and others, Workday, ServiceNow. These technologies are provided as software as a service, so they either run potentially in a private cloud that you run or in public cloud. Again, that adds some additional complexity just from a sheer technology perspective of the cloud being running in the cloud. But also, these vendors will be changing their applications when they want to make changes to them. So you kind of lose control over the ability to control the change. You have to be able to react at least at the same rate and test at the same rate as these organizations, if they form part of your application landscape. If these technologies are there, then you need to be able to test at least at the same rate that they run at. So there's just this overwhelming amount of change going on and being pushed into an organization. And historically, the ways of testing just aren't fit for the purpose or the challenge that we're now faced with these complex environments. So if we look at how an organization might typically handle testing, whether that's the person on the right here is an automation engineer or a manual tester, we have these, we're simplifying it down slightly, but let's take on this idea of there's kind of a couple of people within an organization. There's the business analyst or the subject matter expert or just the person who understands how a particular business or part of a business process should function. And historically, they're the person that might document a test case, a test scenario. So they would be walking through the application, taking screenshots, putting it into a Word document or an Excel document with the description of the various steps that have to be taken to repeat that test. They hand that off to the person that is going to be performing that test either manually or to a automation engineer. So someone on the IT side who is going to try and turn that knowledge that that business analyst has imparted in that document, try and turn it into a level of automation that can, on an automated basis, repeat what that business analyst is expecting to achieve from their test case. Now, there's several times this will go around through feedback loops and changes and tests, and this becomes quite a complex and part of the bottleneck and potentially error-prone scenario. So this is how it typically is done in organizations today. And what we wanted to do with the Worksoft certified platform is make this bit as painless as possible and extend not just the ability to take that knowledge from that business analyst for that business analyst to impart their knowledge, but impart it directly into an automation platform that gives us the automation straight away without all this endless feedback loops and misinterpretation and human error. So how does this make things faster? This is actually some results from a customer of Worksoft who had been doing manual testing and have moved into a legacy tool. And when we talk about legacy tools, we're talking about automation technologies that are very script and programming based. So you require people who understand Visual Basic to write test scenarios and test automation to test your applications. These kinds of things, these were the figures that this organization gave us in terms of the relative savings that they saw when they went through the various scenarios. So 136 different scenarios when they did it manually, when they tried to do it with a legacy tool, and then when they did it with a Worksoft certified platform. And what I'm going to do is go on and show some of the capabilities that we have that will back up why we're achieving these significant savings for organizations. So this is just the initial build. But if we're looking at doing and repeating this on a regular basis, so let's say a weekly or a monthly release cycle, then the savings start to really mount up. So as I said, something that was a bit of research done by one of our organizations, but a massive saving in terms of the numbers of hours, and then the follow-on effort required to run what we term lights out testing. So to be able to do this on a scheduled basis such that you're testing everything you need to test at whatever rate you require to test them. So back to that idea of the velocity of change, being able to test that at whatever rate you want to test. So what we're seeing is by removing a lot of these bottlenecks, so the first bottleneck is that the subject matter expert needs to impart their knowledge to the automation engineer or to the manual tester. Being able to automate rather than have manual testers significantly reduces the amount of time spent in automation. But having a platform, and in this we're talking about Worksoft Certified, having a platform that is designed to be very, very simple to use, requires no programming skills whatsoever, that aids with the ability to maintain automation. So change isn't just new applications and new test scenarios. Old test scenarios, old test automation needs to be updated to reflect changes in the applications as we go along. And that ease of maintenance, and we'll see some of these capabilities when I get into the demonstration, that ease of maintenance means that with a technology like Worksoft Certify, organizations are able to push through what has always been a kind of a barrier to coverage. Legacy manual testing, you've got to throw bodies at it, so you're limited in what you can test in the period of time. Automation tools that are based around programming, these legacy tools, tend to have this ceiling of somewhere less than 40%. Some organizations achieve somewhere, between 20 and 40%. But with Certify, many of our customers are pushing 80% plus of coverage because of the ease with which they can do and create this automation and then run it at will and then maintain it. And that's all about the intelligent automation platform that we have. It's broken down into a number of kind of capabilities. Starting on the left, if we look at automated business process discovery, this is using, taking the ability to have a business user, so again, that subject matter expert, that business analyst we talked about at the start of the presentation, that person who has to impart their knowledge of how their process should work, being able to take that knowledge in a very, very simple way and turn it into a usable asset, so something that can be automated and run very, very simply. So discovering how applications are used within an organization by the users and then turning that into an automation asset. The middle section is about actually just performing that automation. So being able to run that at will, being able to simply maintain and update and change and make data-driven the automation. And the final step is a relatively new area that we're starting to see, something called robotic process automation. This is the idea of not really testing, but using an automation platform to execute and run laborious elements of a business process. So something like a manual reconciliation that a finance clerk might do against 3 different applications, copying and pasting into Excel and running a macro to check that everything reconciles properly. That is something that is prime candidate for automation, and that's a term now that's being called robotic process automation. Again, something that a lot of our customers are doing. So if you can get all this right, it means that you can change at a pace, at whatever pace your fastest technology vendor or your business is driving you to change at, you can achieve levels of agility because testing doesn't become a bottleneck to change. We're not having to say to the business, slow down, we can't change any quicker than once a quarter or once a month. With the right technologies in place, you can change at a rate that meets the business requirements or the technology requirements. And in doing that, you become more efficient as well, naturally, but also it reduces the risk, because if you're able to test more, so that 80+% coverage, then when you are releasing at whatever rate you want to release at, you can release sure in the knowledge that you've tested everything, and therefore the risk of that release is significantly reduced. So that was kind of setting the scene behind what I'm going to go and show you in terms of the demonstration. I'm now going to actually go through a live demonstration of some of these capabilities. So let me switch into my demo environment that I have running here. And I'm going to use, just as an example, I've got Salesforce.com. So as a software as a service application delivered through a web user interface. And I'm going to use this as an example for how we create intelligent and use intelligent automation. So I've got Salesforce running here on my system. I also have a small component from Worksoft running in my system tray, which is called our capture engine. And this is a piece of technology that when we give it to some of these business analysts, these users that we talked about earlier, we give them some simple training and then ask them to simply do their day job. So in this case, I'm going to take on the role of a business analyst who is responsible for the Salesforce platform and is responsible for, in this case, testing out the creation of an opportunity within Salesforce. So all we have to do is teach them. In fact, before I do that, I'm just going to quickly show you something previously. So we're going to capture, using our capture engine, the activity of that business user. That's going to be passed up into the Worksoft platform, where we can then generate some assets from it, so automation and documentation and so on. So what I want to do quickly is just show you, this is the start point for the business process discovery engine. This is a view of activities that have been captured today. So if I refresh this, what we'll see is there's only one activity. It was a Salesforce.com ad product. So I captured this earlier on today into this. So the way my environment is filtered, I've got all captures by my user that have happened today. So there's not going to be much to show here, but I want to show you that if I manually refresh, there's nothing here currently other than this one activity that I captured before the webinar. So now let me come back and actually go through, as that business analyst, the Salesforce activity. So all we have to train the user to understand is a couple of key things. One is to say, begin capture. And then we teach them some keystrokes or hotkeys, if you like, that they can do to add some notation or some knowledge into this. So I'm going to do the hotkey for naming the activity. So I can give a name to this activity. So I'm going to say, so this might be what I might call the activity itself. I can also put in comments in here. I can say that I'd like the capture engine to take screenshots at various points in time. There's a few hotkeys that we teach the user. So now I just go through and I do my activity, my role. So in this case, I'm going to click on the accounts link. I'm going to select Worksoft as the account. I'm going to come down and I'm going to click on the new opportunity button, and let's call this, what's the date today? July the 25th opportunity. So I'm going to give it a name, select a type for this particular opportunity. So let's say new customer. The lead source for this, I'm just going to fill in some of these fields to show the capabilities, is going to be other. Put in an amount. Let's go for 18. Put in today's date, which is 07/25/2016 in US format in this case. And the stage I'm going to put this down at is closed 1. And you'll notice down in the capture engine it's telling me how many steps it's captured. I now say save. And that's me created that opportunity, and that might be all I do as my day job, so I'm just going to say end the capture. Now that capture information has now been sent into the Analyze engine, this business process visualization and discovery engine. So if I come back to Analyze now and refresh my view, I now have a second activity. This was the one we just created, SFDC Create Opportunity. Now, as I said, this isn't a particularly exciting view of the captures at the moment because there have only been 2 today by my user ID, but this obviously builds out over a period of time, and if I'd gone through several activities, this would chain out to show more activities. I'm going to quickly show you an example of a more advanced one. So this is a set of activities where various users were performing captures. The Analyze, the business process discovery capability, brings together all that knowledge. It consolidates common activities and then builds out these process flows. So this was just a quick show of how this can start to get a bit more advanced. But what I want to come back with is focus on some of just the capabilities that are available to me here now that I've got these captures available. I can select this activity here, this particular, the Create Opportunity one, and say what I'd like to do is generate some documentation for this. And we'll call it July 25th Create Op. And say I can create a Word or a PDF file, so if you wanted to amend it you could choose a Word, but I'm just going to go for PDF here. So I've asked for that to be generated. I can also say I want some automation to be rendered from this. So I've selected the activity and I'm going to say Create Automation. And let's call it SFDC Create Op July 25th as an example. And that's going to go and turn the capture that we just walked through into some automation assets that I can use to run that automation, and I'll come back and show that. Now some other things we can start to do here. These are separate captures potentially done by different people as part of a process that individually those people don't really know what happens downstream or upstream from them. But an overall process owner can come in here and start to understand and look at the various activities that have gone on. So they might say, okay, we've got a create op and we've got an add product. Actually, we want to test those 2 things in combination. So what I can do is highlight both of these and say I want to connect these activities. And what that will do is build me a combined process flow. So now I've got the Create Opportunity flowing into add product. I could select 3 there. And I could now say, okay, I've now got these 2 combined things. Go and build me some documentation and automation from this. So I can get process documentation and automation built for these highly complex processes that are all pieced together through this view here. Let me quickly come back to my documents and we'll show you. Here's the Create Opportunity document that I asked a PDF to be generated. Here's that, it's already set to 100%. Here's that document. So this is the one we've just created here. We'll see we've got full screenshots of the activities that I went through. We have this idea of a narrative where I send a click to the Worksoft link. The narrative describes the activity that I took. So I click the New Opportunity button. I input July the 25th op into the opportunity name text box, and we get snippets of all of the fields that I've interacted with when I went through as that user performing my activities. So we've got process documentation created from simply that person doing their day job. I'm not going to dwell too much on this because I want to get into the automation side of things. If you recall, I asked it to also generate some automation for me. So now what I'm going to do is open up the full Certify client. This is where the automation run parts actually exist. So I'm going to log into Certify. So let me just connect in. Excuse me. And I've got an area within the Certify platform where I can do various things. So I've got a folder here. It's got subfolders containing pieces of automation. The idea behind Certify is that the automation that we generate is consistent across different technologies. It's easy to understand, and we can start to reuse and build upon and create processes from work that already other people have already done. So I'm going to say I want you to go and get the automation that we just had analyzed render for me. So it's this one here, create op July 25th, and I'm going to say bring that in. I just need to tell Certify that it is a Salesforce application in this case. That part of it is, and I say import. So now I have my automation, and if I come and look at the steps for it here, in the same way I showed the narrative in the document, we've got this narrative that describes the action. Left-click the accounts link, left-click the Worksoft link. I input July 25th op into the opportunity name text box. Everything within Certify follows this idea of a narrative that describes what object we're interacting with. So if we look at the object column here, we see the various objects, so the type combo box, the opportunity name text box, and then the action that we perform on those objects. And the narrative is kind of a pseudo-English language description of that. This is the automation within Certify. Simple to follow, simple to understand. I can run this straight away. So if I click the run button, now I'll be executing as we quickly go through this demo. I'm doing the execution myself. I've taken my hands off the keyboard and mouse, and what we'll see now is this is now Worksoft Certify repeating the activities that I went through as that user. So there's the opportunity name, type, there's the lead source, amount, and the stage, and saved. So we get the results back. It tells us that it took 24 and a bit seconds to do that. We get a step-by-step breakdown of all of the various steps. So I left-click the account link, I left-click the Worksoft link, so on and so forth. So there's my process being executed. Now, a couple of things I'm going to do here very quickly. Let's say we want to make this more data-driven. So I want to change the opportunity. I want to be able to test different types of opportunities or different types of lead sources rather than other. I want to put web, and I also want to change the amount, let's say. I can pick up these three fields and say, what I want to do is create a layout. And what I'm doing is creating a separation between the test data and the test logic, if you like. So I'll give it a name, and what we'll see is that these values have now changed, and they're coming from a set of test data here. So I can now change that to that. Let's make the lead source web instead, and let's make the amount 21. So I've changed it to July 25th op 2. So I've got test data separated from my test logic. What we can also start to do is build out end-to-end processes from the activities that others might have created already. So I'm going to say I want to create a new process here. This is going to be end-to-end SFDC for the webinar. And the steps within this particular automation are just going to be links to pre-existing pieces of automation. So I had the create op activity that I just automated. I had that business user go through their day task. We captured it. It immediately created automation. So I'm going to have that as one of my pieces of activity. I'm also going to pull in some automation components that I have in another folder in my environment. So I've got a Salesforce logon component. I've got an add product similar to the one we saw in the Analyze engine earlier. So I'm going to bring those in. Now we're in the wrong order, so you start to get the idea behind this tree idea. We've got an end-to-end that is made up of calls to existing pieces of automation. So I just need to get these into the right order. So things like changing the order of things within Certify is very easy. I can just move the steps around. So I drag the logon process to the top, then we've got a create op, then we've got an add product. So that's my process. Because it's got the logon to Salesforce, I'm actually going to log all the way out of Salesforce, and I'm going to run this process that I've just built, captured as part of the webinar, one component, but joined together some pre-existing pieces of componentry to form the idea of an end-to-end process that is going to pass across different technologies. So there's the launch of Salesforce, and there's the logon. There's our logon. It's going to get to the home page of Salesforce. It's going to create an opportunity. And if you remember, I said the name was going to be opportunity 2. There we go, opt2, and we change the lead source to web, I think it was. Yep, and the amount to 21. So data-driven testing is part of an end-to-end process. It's now going to go on, save that, and add some product. So there's the add product part. You didn't see me automate that, but that's just a piece of automation that I've dragged into my end-to-end process. In this case, it's going to go and select a product from the product name that's looking for a particular product in this table, the Three Musketeers, and it's going to say amount and save. So it's added product to the opportunity. So there you have, and again, we get a breakdown, of the time. So roughly 50 seconds, each of the individual sub pieces of automation. We get a green check mark for those. We get the timings for each of those, so 14, 18, and 16 seconds respectively. So that's how easy it is to take that simple automation and start to build it out into a piece of end-to-end testing. Now I've been focusing on Salesforce here, but let me log out of everything I've got here, and I'm going to quickly, in the last 4 minutes, I'm going to run a test that tests an end-to-end process that passes across multiple different technologies. So we have this one here that is doing an end-to-end process. Bear with me while it opens up. There we go. So this is, again, the same idea that we have that parent process made up of sub-calls to sub-processes. So we have things like the Salesforce process, log on, create opportunity, add product. So similar to you just saw me automate. But then we're going to go into SAP and do some work in an ERP system. We're going to connect into an AS400 application and do some automation in there. So that's this company's fulfillment application. So now if I run this, what we'll see is this will do a complete end-to-end test across different technologies. But all of this is this same intelligent style of automation, of steps, of objects and actions. The first stage in this process is we actually pick a random name from a data file, and we use this screen, this HTML form, just to show the name we've picked. So although it says data generator, it should say data viewer. Carl Capers is the name we've picked from the random file. This is just so you see the name we've picked. So Carl Capers. We launch Salesforce. We're going to do a create opportunity. Carl Capers is going to be the opportunity owner for that particular opportunity. So there's the new opportunity being created with that name, Carl Capers. And then when we go and add product, it's the exact same feature that I showed earlier for adding a product, but I'll explain a couple of things that are happening here. The product name is the Three Musketeers, but in the table at the bottom there is a product code. We are searching for a product name Three Musketeers, and we're storing the product code from that table, which is 1470. That product code is the same thing as the material number in the ERP system, in this case SAP. So we're logging onto SAP, and we're going to do a sales order creation within SAP. What you'll see is the material number being used in the table at the bottom here, this table where the second column is material. You'll see we put in 1470. There's a sales order has been created. The sales order number has been stored 26919. That's being carried forward through the remaining parts of the SAP transaction. And now we're connecting you through a terminal emulator into an AS400 application. And we're going to be bringing some of the data that we've collected from SAP in this case. So the order number is going to be used here. So there's 26919. That's the order number from SAP. Finally, back into SAP to validate that the whole process is completed. And what we've tested here is an end-to-end process that goes across multiple different technologies. So local web, software as a service web, ERP system, in this case SAP, terminal emulator into an AS400 application, then back into SAP. Now, this process failed. The reason there's a failure intentionally engineered into the demo just to show the principles. The failure is this step here in the SAP ordering process. I can look here and see the object was the processing status field. The narrative tells me what the logic of that was. We wanted to verify that the processing status text field is equal to correct. So that was our business logic. We were expecting to see the word correct. That didn't happen, so it's failed. I didn't explain it, but I was asking Certify when it executed to take screenshots if it encountered any failed steps, but also to continue running for the purposes of the demo because we knew this was in here. So there's my incorrect turning up in the processing status field. That is why this particular step failed. And you can see how that's shown here. We get full traceability of all of the results. If I come back to Certify here, we've got Results tab. These are all the executions that have gone on, myself and my colleagues, against this single execution engine. And the idea is that you can get to the point where you can schedule all of these executions to happen lights out as and when you want to have them happen. And we have several organizations. I'm very quickly going to come back and show just the one last screenshot here. Sorry, not screenshot, presentation screen. So this is the US Affordable Health Care Act, the Obamacare story. They're testing 500,000 business process steps every night of the week in about a 2 to 3 hour window. They spin up a bunch of virtual desktop environments with certify engines running on them and test 500,000 steps. Basically every part of their application is tested nightly. That's the idea behind intelligent automation, being able to do that level and scale, industrial scale automation to completely remove risk of change. So I've gone 1 minute over. I do apologize. Let me see if there are any questions and I will do my best to answer them in a minute. Bear with me. I get the questions tab up. Will we get a link for the recording? Yes, we will be sending out a link. Automation, how fragile are the automation tests? Well, they're all based around an object. The object definition and recognition capabilities are very easy to maintain. So if an object, if a screen object changes, very easy to update the object reference. One of the core capabilities of Certify is that everything is designed to be unique and deduplicated. So if we've got an object once, we can change that object definition, and every piece of automation that uses that object definition will immediately recognize that change. Mainframe green screen, you've just seen that. What happens if there's a failure in the test? You can define your behaviors if there's a failure. Right? In that example, I asked Certify to carry on, but there's all kinds of failure behaviors you can put into the execution engine. Question on, what was the last one? Multiple languages. Yes, we can test against multiple languages, so it's kind of, we're using the objects as the things we recognize, so whatever the object characteristics are, we'll be recognizing them in that way. And I think that is it. I've gone slightly over. If there are any other questions, as I said, you'll get the IDC report. There's a link. There'll be a link to the recording here, which we can send out to anyone who's interested in it. And I guess there's an opportunity to follow up with you that you'll be contacted just to get your impression of the webinar. But I want to thank you for your attendance and your attention. So my name is Dean Robertson. You've got the email address of the person who invited you, but also, if any other questions, drobertson@worksoft.com. So thanks again. Have a good week, and thanks for your attendance. Bye-bye.